In this video, what we're going to do is take some notes in our exercise book and just make sure that we know most of the formulas and functions that are needed for doing all of this unit, which is spreadsheets, right? Data analysis. Okay, so the first thing you need to do in your exercise book is just put in a main title. Make sure you put a date over on the right hand side, and then you can put a subtitle for formulas and write this little sentence just to explain what a formula is. So if you can't read my writing, I'll read it out to you. It says, in a spreadsheet, a formula is an expression that operates on values in a range of cells. So the first one here is an example of simple addition of two cells. So here you can see that we have to start with this equal sign to begin with the formula. And then we select a cell. So this is cell A1 with a plus sign, right? So this is our operator, the arithmetic operator for plus. And then B2, it's the other cell that I want to add together. Now here's a different example. This is where I am doing multiplication and subtraction. Now, in this case, what you will notice is if you remember that big things get done first, that what happens will be these two will be multiplied. So whatever is in C4 multiplied by whatever is in D3, those two will be multiplied first, and then the answer of this will be subtracted by A3. In this example, you can see that I've put brackets round these two. And the reason for that is because we do not want B6 to be divided by F4. What we want is A1 plus B6 to be added together, then the answer of this divided by F4. Okay, so there's quite clearly you can see that you need brackets, and this is just the same as that what you would do in mathematics. It'd be the same here. If I put brackets around this part here, that would mean I would want to subtract these two cells together first and then multiply it by C4. But if I don't put the brackets, these two get multiplied together first, and then the answer of this gets subtracted by A3. So just make sure you take all these notes down, pause the video if you are just writing this into your exercise books. Let's have a look at functions now. Now that was simple formulas that we looked at, and now we're going to look at some functions, and there's quite a lot of functions. I mean, there's hundreds of functions, and we're only going to use maybe 10, 15, 20 possibly different functions in this unit. So functions are predefined formulas in a spreadsheet. They eliminate laborious manual entry of formulas while giving them human-friendly names. Okay, so that is what a function is. Now we're going to do the very first one, an example, and the first one that you probably came across was sum. Okay, so what we will do is just write sum in capitals like this, and we want to then explain what sum does. Okay, so the sum function takes a range of cells and adds them together. Okay, so we just write a little comment here on what this one does. Now let's just look at a quick example of that. So here we can write equals sum and an open bracket, and then in here in this open bracket we put the range. So I'm going to just do A1 to A10. So that means I want to add all of these together. Okay, A1, A2, A3, A4, all the way up to A10. And that is a range of cells. So what would be worth doing is maybe using a different colored color. You could just highlight the fact that this is a range of cells. Okay, so this is the function, and you can see it's got an easy to remember, human friendly, as we said, names. So sum. Now there is different ways that you can use sum as well. We could do an alternative where we use a function and we turn your function into a formula. So this is when it becomes a formula. So that's just a basic function, and we can say equals sum, open brackets, and we'll just do some different cells, B3 to B10 as an example. But then we can do something like this. We can divide it by 5. So the answer of this, these would all be added together. So a bit like what we saw with the normal formulas, where you might want to add a couple of cells together. Here we're adding several cells together, and then the answer of this is going to be divided by 5. So I'm just going to write function used in a formula. Okay, so that's that one. I've got a little bit of room left on here, so just make sure you take all these notes down. And there is other things that we could do with sum as well. There's ones where we can skip out cells, but we'll probably not bother with doing that. Okay, now the next one that we might need to know how to do would be average, possibly how to do the average. So this is a common one as well. And we'll just write average like this. Okay, so the average function. Now this specific one is the mean average. Okay, so it's the most common one, so we just call it average. There is a function called mode and median, but this is just for the mean average. Okay. Okay, so we can just write that the average, so that's V, function is the most common average, which is the mean. Okay, so just make sure that you know that that's that kind of average. Right, so similar to sum up here, we just basically write equals average, and then you say what you want to get the average of. So what does the average do? Well, the average adds them all together and divides by the number. So it's a bit like this, like say if I had 5 cells, here's not 5 cells, but if it was 5 cells being added together divided by 5, that would be the average, right? So that isn't the average in this case, but I'm just showing you as an example. But here what this will do is add all the cells together and then divide it by the number of cells. So this is a quick way of doing it. Instead of having to write a formula for it, you can just write this average. So the way it will work would be if I do, let's say I do B to B11 as an example. Okay, and what we can do is just write how this is exactly the same. Okay, so this same as, and we'll do this sum B2 to 11 divided by 10. So it's easier, as you can see, to do this than do this. Okay, and the other advantage is that what if you wanted to extend the amount of averages that you're calculating, or the amount of cells. So instead of B2, you might have said, oh, actually I wanted to do it from B1, or I wanted to do it up to B30. Well, here you would always need to change this number because this is like a static number, where here you don't. Okay, so just take some notes on that. And we will move on to our next function. So the next one that we want to look at is count. So just going to write up at the top, count. Okay, so what does the count do? Count all cells in a given range that contains some numeric data. That's what count does, okay? So if you've got numbers in there, it'll count how many cells have numbers. So this, you might think, well, where will I use this? Well, you would probably see that we don't need to use this at some point, but we'll just take a note on it right now. So the count function counts all cells in a given range that contain only numeric values. Okay, so the example would be equals count, and I can just do A1 to A100 as an example. Okay, and what this will do is imagine where you've written in some numbers for whether somebody's paid a deposit or something like that, and you would write in the deposit number in a cell, and then you could count up, and this would tell you how many people have paid a deposit, because if you had, say, 48 numbers out of the 100 cells here, it would say that you've got 48. And so 48 that the people have paid a deposit for some sort of event, maybe. Okay. Now the alternative to this would be to do a count A. And what count A does, it counts all cells regardless of its type. So that means that it will count if it has dates, times, strings, which are, bits of text, and anything, right? Okay, so count A, count all. You can think of that as like that. So we'll just take a quick note of count A, and we'll just say counts anything that is in a cell. Okay, right, so simple example again, count A, C to C 450 as an example. So that's count A. Now the next one is a lot more complicated, and you've already done this one. This one will be where you're doing the if. Okay, so this if is a really important function, which is to do with, it's in programming, so it's the same as in you've done Scratch, and you're going to do, and you may have done some programming in Python, or if you haven't yet, you will do, and you will do this if in those languages. In Scratch programming, you have to use if all the time, and in Python programming, you need to use it quite a lot. So you're wanting to say if something is true or not. Okay, so we'll just explain what this is. The if function is used to sort your data. Now, not sort in terms of sorting it into order, sort your data according to some logic, okay, a logical expression. Okay, so the best way to look at this is just to write out how it will essentially, how you need to put it together. So it starts off like this, equals if, and then you've got, I'm going to just write logical test, then you've got a comma, and then I'm going to just do it like this, square brackets, value if true. Okay, so this is what you would put in if the value is true, and then value if false. I'm running out of room, but there you go, then the square brackets and then that at the end. Okay, right, so that's just basically how this if looks like. So what you need to always remember, I'm going to do it in a different colored pen. Separate sections with commas. Okay, now as you can see, there is basically the first part, which is your logical test, and then if this is true, that's what goes in here between these commas, and if it's false, that's that bit there. Okay, so let's do a quick easy example. So we'll do this example here, equals if, and let's say we did if A1 is greater than, I'm going to use greater than, or equal to, and so that's A1 greater than or equal to, let's say 20. Okay, so if this logical test is true, then I'm going to say true, and if it's false, I'm just going to say false. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Now, what you need to notice about this, here, this is a cell reference. This is a comparison operator, which is in this case greater than or equal to. Okay, and then this is just a number, right? So this is just an integer, a whole number. Okay, so it's not a cell, but I could do a cell if I wanted to. And then this is what I want to say if it's true or false. Now, you can see here that these two are strings. Okay, and when you do a string, you can see it's got these double quotes. You can use single quotes. Alright, so strings need quotes. Okay, that's really important that you have those if you're wanting to put that in there. Now, we'll have another look at something else related to an if, so just make sure you take those notes. And the next one on an if statement would be, let's have a look. I'm just gonna continue on with another example. So let's say we do equals if, and I'm just gonna do if B3 is less than this time, just less than D4. So you can see I'm using two cells and saying if this one is less than this one, then I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to do a mix of things here. Now, with the comma, what I'm going to do is add another function inside of here, and this is going to be interesting. So if B3 is less than D4, what I'm going to do is do sum, and then A1 to A10, close that brackets, right? And then the false, if it's not, then I'm just going to do something else. I'm going to average. And this is just showing you an example of what you can do. Average A1 to A10. And I need another bracket on the end there, okay? Because I've opened this bracket and I've closed the bracket on the end. I've opened a bracket here, closed it, opened a bracket here, close this, okay? So let's just label this up. Logical test, right, is B3 less than D4. If this is true, it's going to do this. If true, sum or add A1 to A10, and then if false, average A1 to A10. Okay, so this is just an example of the kind of things you can do, and you can see what this is called. This is nested, right? This is a nested functions. And what do we mean by nested? It means it's nested inside of my if. Okay, so I'll just put a little title above that saying nested functions with if. Alright, okay, so hopefully you understand that fine, that if this is true, this is only true or false. If it's true, we do this. If it's false, it does that. Okay, and that is a couple of examples that you've seen so far. Okay, now you can imagine you don't have to do functions, you could do formulas as well. So if B3 was less than D4, you could say B3 multiplied by D4, or you could say B3 divided by D4. You know, you could do different things like that. The other one that we want to look at for an if as well is a nested if. Okay, so this is nested functions with if, with this if selection here, but we have an even longer one that you can do. So if, we'll say nested if, so this is an if with another if in it. So it sounds a little bit funny, but let's have a look at it, how it works. So I'm going to write if, I'm going to do the same as before, if C4 is, let's say I'm going to do it equal to D4, then if that's true, I'm going to write yes. Okay. Then if it's not true, I want to ask another question. So if this is true, I want to ask this. And if it's not true, I can do another if. straight away. So this is going in, you can see this is if it's true and this is if it's false, but I'm asking then another if. So I need to open another bracket. And then I'm going to say, well then if it's not equal to, if C4 is less than D4, then what I want to do is answer, I'm going to write, okay. And then if neither of this, if this isn't true and this isn't true, then this is my false. And I'll say no. And then I need to close two brackets again because 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. Right. So this is first logical test. Right here. This one, if true. This is our second logical test. This is, again, I'm going to write it down here, if true, and then if false. Okay. You will get to practice this. It's a little bit complicated as you can see at first, but you will practice that. Okay, so eventually you should be able to get it. Now the other one that we will want to do is count if, and the count if function is really very similar to the one that you have with count and the one that we've got for if. Okay, so it's kind of mixed between the two. Okay, so what we will need to do is just have a look at how that one works. So what we will do is it works a little bit differently from the way we have this logical statement here. So we're going to write count if, and we'll just write what it does. Okay, so we'll say if any cells in a range are equal to the criteria, so if any cells are equal to the criteria, and then what we want to do is it'll come back saying whether it is or not. Okay, so the example that we want to use for this would be, if I just have a look for an example, a good one. So what it does, it are equal to the criteria, it'll count it then, won't it? Okay. Okay, so let's say I do the equal sign then. Sorry, I was just looking for equals count if, and we'll just write in here range of cells, comma, criteria. Okay, so that's how it looks, and here's an example. So we'll do equals count if, and I'm just going to say C4 to C350, and if any of those have the word booked, so let's say it was hotel bookings, and you want to see how many people have booked rooms or something, or if we've got room bookings. So there, it would check how many of these cells say the string booked. Okay, so we'll just label this up, I'm going to say range of cells, and here string for criteria. Right, so that's your count. Obviously you could do it differently as well. We could do count if, and we can say things like, you know, we could do A1 to A100 and check if that has any of those contain the number 24 as an example. So you can see there's no quotes around that. So that is an integer. And you can basically do that with lots and lots of different things. Right, so the next one that we want to look up is the lookup function. Okay, so just make sure you take notes on all of that. Pause the video while you're writing your notes down. And we're going to just look at the next one here. So this next one is lookup. Now, lookup is a really, really useful function to be able to do. Okay. Now, what this lookup does, lookup looks through a sorted list. Lookup looks through a sorted row or column. Okay. For a specific value and returns that value in the row or column. Now, I usually do a different kind of one. I do HLOOKUP for doing horizontal or VLOOKUP, but lookup can also be used as well. But as you can see here, it specifies that it would be a sorted list. Okay, a sorted sort of kind of list of items. Now, the best way to look at this would be to probably actually just do a sort of an example. Okay, so what we will do here is we will do a vertical one. So I'm just going to say, like, say it was test results for a student. So what I'm going to have is grades over here, and have that there, grades. And what I wanted to do is I'm going to say if you've got from 90, 98, 97, 96, 95, right? And let's say we just did this where you got an A for this, B for that, C, D, and E. Okay, so these are this is my grades, and I'm just going to put that into like a kind of box. Like this. Okay. Now over here we've got a student, and he's called Sean. Okay, and Sean has just got in a test 98. Right, so 98 is written here. So what we want to do is then give the actual grade. So above here I want to say results and then grade. Okay, now imagine we've got Sean and we've also got a different person. Let's say we've got another Irish person, Siobhan. Okay, Siobhan, and she's got 90 in here. So the way it works is that we need to put a formula in our grades over here. So I'm just going to do that. And in grades, so 98 would be that we want it to return and give us a B, and 90 wants to give us an A. So what is the formula that goes into this one as an example? Right, well, what we obviously need to know is the cells of this range. So let's say that over here, I've got A, B, and here's a gap, C, D, E, and F as an example. And here this is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is all 1, 2, and then the third one would be underneath here. Okay, so what's the formula for this? So I'm just going to do equals lookup, open the brackets, and what I need to do is say what I want to look at, right? So I want to look at E1 in this case. E1, I want to look at this one, right? And then I need to get the range of cells that I want to look at. So the range of cells that I want to look at would be this range. So what is the range of cells? So the range of cells is A1 down to B5, A1 just check this, yeah, A1 down to B5, yeah. Okay, and then what I want it to give me back, I want to give me the result range. So the result range would be this one, right? So I want it to return to me B1 to B5, okay? So from B1 to B5. And that's how lookup works. Now let's just label that up. So this one is this cell here. This is the whole range. And then this bit is just this side, okay? And then maybe just do like that. Not really drawing that out too well, but anyway. Okay, so hopefully that just explains a little bit how that works with a lookup. Now, as I said, it's with a sorted. That's to do it sorted. Let's look at the same thing, but a VLOOKUP. So if we do VLOOKUP, and quite often I just do a VLOOKUP instead. This would be quite often the best one or the better one to do, because it's a bit more specific on what you want to look up. Okay, so a VLOOKUP is vertical, right? So vertical table of values to be looked at. And here I'm going to do exactly the same one, but just with a VLOOKUP. So equals VLOOKUP, open the bracket, and with the VLOOKUP, what I can do is I can say whether it's been sorted or not sorted, or I can even leave it out. So this is one where it has to be kind of sorted, so it is sorted in order. But if you had values that weren't sorted in order for some reason, then you could have a look at how to do that instead. So VLOOKUP, and this is going to be the last one that we're going to do today. So VLOOKUP, I'm going to do it's E1 again, and then just do the comma, the range of cells. Now, this time I'm going to add a little extra in here. This range of cells, which is these cells, this needs to always be the same, and that always needed to be the same. So if I did this if I pulled this one down to here, it wouldn't work because these would change, right? These would change here. So what I'm going to do for this VLOOKUP is keep these cells the same. Now you will see there's two ways of doing that. One way is to do a named range, so call this a name, give it a name, and then put that named range in here. And then the other way is actually to do absolute cell referencing. So absolute cell referencing is where you put $signs on front of the column, and then $sign on front of the row. So A1, so that's A1, and then $, B5, $5, and that is my range. Okay, so this, if I then pulled this down, it would actually, this one would change to E2. So what? Yeah, that's E1, E2. That would change to E2, but this one would always stay the same. Okay, so the next thing I need to look at is my index. So the index is basically this part, which I'm saying this is 1 and this is 2. So I'm just going to put 2. I want it to bring back row number 2, or sorry, column number 2. And then the last thing, well, the last thing I can say is whether it's sorted or not. And what I can do is just put true or false, or I could just leave it empty, and I can just do that. Okay, so quickly label this up. Now this I'm going to write and say this is relative cell reference, because it's relative. That means it'll change whenever I pull it down. And this is absolute, we call that absolute cell reference of a range. And you can just say it won't change. Okay, underline that. And then this is column index. All right, and that's it. Simple and done. Simple. All good.